Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.
Always better to be on the screen when the show starts. Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show live stream and podcast. Might be a bit like that this morning. I'm a little hoarse, not in a My Little Pony sort of way, so I don't want any silly horse names this morning, but a wonderful day visiting the capital. Met up with Bobby and Andy, two very notable Gumpers in this community. After an amazing show yesterday, talking with Tig James. Bobby was on the screen, wasn't he? Michael Heron, like me, a little bit gobsmacked and quiet yesterday, talking with Tig James about the plight of some, not only Brits actually, moving in and out of Portugal post-Brexit and across the Schengen space, but what happens also to some other people who don't have the correct CEF paperwork. Yes, CEF quite unpopular yesterday morning on the show. Well worth a view yesterday. We were looking at citizenship. Is it worth it? And it was meant to be a broader view of that question. And we did touch on it, you know, the benefits and beauty of becoming a Portuguese citizen. But there was also a little bit of controversy in the mix yesterday as well. You might want to rewatch that if becoming a citizen is of interest to you, or some of the difficulties and challenges that are going on for post-Brexit Brits as well. If that affects you, you might want to watch the conversation that included Tig for the first time, Tig James from Brits in Portugal. Great to talk to you, Tig. And I hope you'll come back and talk to us and update us with what's going on. I think I do need to adjust myself slightly in the frame this morning. It is going to be an easygoing, laid-back show after yesterday. Straight on the road after the show. So sorry about some of the post-production things, clips, the podcast, and so on. I'll have to do that this morning. I think I missed the Quem Sabia yesterday, so we'll have double bubble on that and double dad jokes as well today. And what better day to share double dad jokes than with the Portuguesa and Cátia Lima, Beyond Lisbon blogger Cátia Lima, who will be joining us at 9, asking the question, what is it? It's a nice carry-on, continuation from, a nice carry-on means something different, doesn't it, in the UK? But a nice continuation of the citizenship question yesterday. What makes someone Portuguese? Now, I've called the show What Makes Us Portuguese because, of course, that is the aspiration of some of us here in the Gumper community, Good Morning Portugal community, where we learn something new about Portugal every single day, at least one thing, or your money back, especially those of you who don't support the show. You can have double your contribution back. But I do pride myself and suddenly realized the other day that we're all about helping people learn about Portugal, aren't we? And I think it is fair to say, hopefully within the 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours that we tend to be on in the morning, you will be learning something new about Portugal. And if you're a real smarty pants kind of Portuguese pub quiz person, then why not contribute yourself some of the things that you think people don't already know about Portugal? So yes, the Good Morning Portugal show, where you can learn something new about Portugal every single day. And I'm going to keep up that, I was going to call it pressure. I'll keep up that contribution and service over the weekends as well on the GMP VIP platform. Okay, so we'll look at tempura. And I think we're going to be looking at marmalado or marmalade. We can talk to Cátia Lima about that, can't we? So double Quem Sabias today. It is a public holiday here in Portugal. It is the Feast of Corpus Christi. Yesterday, as John... Actually, we've got a really good mix today of videos, and I've got a little bit of reportage from where I was yesterday that in some way answer that question that Cátia is putting to us today and pondering with us what makes someone Portuguese, what might make us Portuguese as we continue our lives here. And I was just about to say, before I interrupted myself at least 3 times there, that I was paid a brilliant compliment by Cátia. I posted a picture of myself cycling back from the mechanics on my bicycle, and I stopped for a Portuguese pit stop, which involved a Risol de Camarão. And she said, that shirt, cycling, drinking pedras, having a coffee, and eating a Risol de Camarão, you're becoming a Portuguese dad. I'll take it. So I've got a bit of cred and a few points there when it comes to answering the question, what is it to become Portuguese? What is it to be Portuguese in our aspiration here? Whether you're going to become a citizen or not. I mean, that's a kind of governmental, bureaucratic thing, isn't it? I think it's possible to become more and more Portuguese wherever you put yourself on the citizenship residency platform. You could spend 2 weeks holiday in Portugal and become that little bit more Portuguese, couldn't you? And all the wonderful things that we love about the country, and start to embody them, I suppose would be the right word. Talking of embodying things, my trip yesterday and the whole business of the Portuguese essence, I had it in so many ways yesterday. We'll come back to John's video of the Vaca das Cordas event. If you're upset by people, I don't know what the right word is, taunting, but I mean, that's what it is really, isn't it? It is a Portuguese tradition, but basically these fellas are taunting a bull and pulling it around Ponte Lima on the end of a rope. I'll give you due a warning on that. If you don't want to see that, of course, you'll be able to look away and turn the sound down for a couple of minutes while we report on that. But it is a very Portuguese activity, very traditional up there in Ponte Lima. Something some people might not want to be doing as part of their journey to become more and more Portuguese. For me, yesterday, after an amazing show, it has to be said, it was one of the most spontaneous and I didn't know that was going to happen yesterday, that we are going to have such the conversation that we had. So I was appalled and really felt very pleased to be part of what I think was a good service to people yesterday, with so many people from our community, with so many good views on the screen yesterday, led by Tig, who only popped in. Well, first of all, Astrid popped in for 10 minutes. And we'll be with Expats Portugal tonight from 7:30 with the Digital Nomad Visa webinar, and then the Dream Team thereafter. Astrid popped in, fairly easygoing start, nice chat with Astrid. And then Tig popped in. She was only meant to be here for 10 or 15 minutes telling us about what's happening for post-Brexit Brits when it comes to citizenship. And she stayed for the whole show with contributions from Bobby and Michael. And then Carl Hyde joined us as well, talking about his experience of becoming a citizen here in Portugal too. So amazing show yesterday. And then hot-footing it to Lisbon to meet up with Bobby and Andy Klein. Great conversation with you two. Thank you so much. Great to be with you both yesterday. And the most talk of, what is it to be Portuguese? Right there in the capital, driving around in my old banger in the capital. And that felt quite Portuguese, having an old car, having a well-maintained old car that's just got through another year of its test, the old jalopy, and driving that. It's got a few rattles and creaks, not unlike its driver. And there I was driving through the lanes, the tiny lanes of Chiado, with the cobblestones and the tram tracks and the tourists. It was really, I felt really Portuguese, and I felt like in an intermediate space, between being a tourist and being a Portuguese person, just somewhere in the middle there. It was really beautiful to know that I knew the city a little bit, and that I would be going into one of those subterranean car parks that has just a couple of millimeters each side of your vehicle as you spiral down past -1, no parking spaces, -2. Although there's a fantastic system where there are lights above the parking spaces. There you are in ancient, kind of almost borderline medieval Chiado. They've built this incredible futuristic car park with LED lights above the parking spaces to tell you that there's a space free. It was amazing, and incredible value as well. That's a lovely Portuguese thing, to park right in the middle of the touristic capital and be there for 4 or 5 hours, I think I was, whilst Mrs. M and the kids were in the Colombo shopping centre, but that's another story. I think they had quite a good time, but I think 4 or 5 hours in a shopping centre shouldn't be inflicted on anybody, should it? But they wanted to go there. They wanted to visit. But yeah, there I was paying €7 for my parking, which just when I lived in London, 30 when I was first driving in London, 40 years ago nearly, You know, it would cost £20, I think, to park for a few hours in the West End of London. And people, this is the Portuguese thing. People are not taking unnecessary advantage of each other, and long may that continue. You're lucky. Older cars aren't allowed in Chiado. Well, maybe there's me going on about how great I feel about being partly Portuguese in Chiado. Maybe I'll get a ticket soon. And I don't know if that may be my my number plate may have been red. But I tell you, it may well have been worth it as well to experience all that I experienced yesterday in Chiado. Okay, Garvo's here as well, talking about Norman, I think. Norman, I've got a message for Norman. If Norman's near you or with you, Garvo, could you bring him to the to whichever device you're watching the Good Morning Portugal show on this morning? Because one of the first things that happened to me in Lisbon yesterday was being met by a group of very large snails. Now, Norman ate snails, didn't he, for the first time yesterday? And I might even have a picture of him enjoying. This is the one after he spat the snail out, isn't it? I think the picture that you sent me, when he's looking a little bit more formal and composed after his first experience of eating a snail here in Portugal. And then I turn up in Colombo shopping centre, which, I mean, it's not really a shopping centre, is it? For anyone who's been to the Colombo shopping centre, it is a small town. I mean, this is it's got the feel of an airport. It's got a hospital. It's got its own hospital. It's got its own chapel. It is extraordinary as a place. And I'm trying to get back into a part of Facebook now where I can see your message, Garvo. I'm not sure it's playing ball with me this morning. Facebook for Business. When you've got a page and you click on your messages on a page, you end up in some sort of what's it called? Meta Business Suite. And now I'm lost. I am really lost in the back of Facebook, just trying to find a picture of my new Scottish best friend who just ate some snails. I can't find that at the moment. But then when I got to Colombo, I saw a gang of snails, and I thought, Norman, these guys are after you, mate. James says it's my cousin Pinky. I haven't seen him for ages. Pinky, Yellowy, Reddy, they were all there. All your cousins were there, James, yesterday. It was an extraordinary thing. Illuminated plastic snails, the sort of thing that Norman might see in his worst nightmares now. However, I think once he started, I mean, do you like snails? Do you like the caracoish? Once he got started, he couldn't stop. And that's the thing about the little caracoish, isn't it? You get hundreds of them in your bowl of seasoned snails. And Norman got into it. I can't find the picture of you. Send me a link and I will see if I can get him. Oh, okay. This will be a treat as well for our American viewers, understanding Norman's Scottish accent. No disrespect to Norman, but he does have a very deep Scottish accent, which we might need to subtitle. I mean, can you imagine if we have Gary the Brummie and Norman the Glaswegian on the screen? No one from the other side of the Atlantic is going to understand what's going on. So we are going to have our team of United Nations interpreters standing by to help with that. Feeling Portuguese, being Joss. What does that mean? Being Joss? Was that like being jovial or being a joss stick? I wonder. Or did you get cut off halfway through typing something there? We need to get on, don't we? We need to get on this one. It's already 9:15. I wanted to give you a little tour of where I was. Yeah, so I met the snails first in Colombo. And then I parked up the car and walked past this shop. And I think, well, things are looking up here in Lisbon. Two naked ladies inside a shop window. But that's the jauntiness, isn't it? That's the eccentricity of being in the capital. It is quirky. Quirky is a good word, isn't it? Being jostled in a crowd of thousands, not being Joss. Being Joss, I thought it was some nice sort of mid-American turn of phrase there. John Heimbach, good morning to you. And we've got your video to come from Ponte Lima in just a moment. So there I am walking past that window, that eye-catching window on the way to Chiado and to José Chef Avileja's place, where I met with Bobby and Andy, the Bairro de Avilés. Amazing restaurant. Look at this. This is the ambiance. It's like being outside, but being inside in a kind of courtyard patio. It's called a patio, isn't it? I think in a patio here in Portugal. And this was the first course, which looks like an olive. And indeed, it was a flavor of olive. But that, my friends, is a film of some sort. It's a signature dish of Chef Avelage. And you pop it in your mouth and you bite on it, and there's an explosion of olive oil, and it's like a dressing inside what looks like a huge green olive. But that's a film that you puncture with your teeth and have the sensation of the flavors bursting inside your mouth. Absolutely delicious. And I won't take you through a slideshow of the whole meal, but I had tartare of tuna and tartare of picanha and azétan, cheese, charcuterie. It was superb. And then finished with, stuck around and hung out with top film producer director Andy Klein. He, of course, of the video course that you can go through on the GMP VIP platform. He'll show you how to make great films using your mobile device, your phone, which is, of course, the least of a smart device these days seems to be a phone. It's all about the camera, isn't it, and the comms on there. But he can show you how to make great movies using just your mobile phone. And we finished with deconstructed pastel de nata. There's a pastel de nata like you've never seen. Exquisite pastry, amazing custard cream there, blobs of custard cream. I'm sure that's not what Chef Avelage calls them, but a delightful take on the pastel de nata there. So all in all, an amazing trip to Chef Avelage's place. Great meeting with Bobby and Andy. And look, going up the stairs to some quirky corner of the patio de barro de Chef Avelage. And then there's this, looks like a shelving system, doesn't it, of curiosities, a shelf full of curiosities. Best mini bar I've ever seen. Not much booze on it, but a very, very brilliant mini bar. But that's a door handle there, not a wooden lady's leg or a lady's wooden leg down to the bottom of the picture. And you open that up, and then you go into this room on the other side of that, the cabaret area.
This used to be a convent building.
Did it really?
Yeah. This was
you can tell, can't you, from the illustration at the back there?
Yeah, exactly. And that's Sister Mary Teresa right there.
Yes, I thought I recognised her. Sister Mary Teresa on the other side of that incredible minibar shelving system there. Really, really great experience. What a fantastic day in Lisbon yesterday. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Andy. Great to see you both. Let's crack on. Let's move towards welcoming Cátia Lima this morning and answering that question. What does it mean to be Portuguese? What makes somebody Portuguese? And there are some clues right there. Oh no, I've got to show you something else. On the way home, we have a day in Lisbon. And we spend some time in the Colombo Centre. A real diversity. Colombo, Avelage. Lisbon has so much to offer. Diversity of culture and experiences. And then we drive. I like to drive home via the old roads, the N8 or the N115, coming out of Lisbon and heading back up to the Silver Coast. And before Torres Vedras, where we had a Japanese meal on the way home. That's what it is to be Portuguese, being able to eat Japanese food in a provincial town, Torres Vedras, which has the most amazing illuminated park of an evening. I think it's has a connection with cycling. It was a beautiful cycling sculpture in Torres Vedras. Torres Novas is somewhere else, of course. Torres Vedras, there was seemed to be a sculpture of a legendary cyclist there. So does anyone know something about that? Learn something new about Portugal every day there. Cycling and the importance thereof in Torres Vedras. But before we got there, we're at a very ancient junction, and look what happens. Now, I hope you didn't hear me cough there, but Mrs. M, quick, get the camera, press record. There's a man herding his goats through a busy intersection, and you can see the signs there: A1, A8, A9. Quite incredible. You just stop there at a junction, traffic coming from every direction, and then a goat herder appears with his goats. Fantastic. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I've been going on a little bit too long right there, haven't I? Already 10 minutes to 9, and making you all wait. We're sharing your wonderful greetings this morning. Great to see you all here. T-Duck was in at 7:48 with a bon dia alegria, and reminding us, of course, that today is a national holiday in Portugal. It is the feast of Corpus Christi today. Corpus Christi, Body of Christ, Catholic festival, first celebrated in 1282. Processions are held throughout Portugal but the most magnificent are in Lisbon, Porto, and Braga. As I was going through the Avenida de Liberdade yesterday, and it was so wonderful. Jacaranda trees, the fragrance of jacaranda blossom or some other blossom that was in the air mixing with the diesel fumes, quite extraordinary. And long may it stay that way, that there are traders driving around, there are tourists, trams, the streets are mixed. I like that. I'm not looking forward to the 15-minute cities and what that might do to Lisbon's incredible atmosphere. But I did see them setting up some staging, bleacher type seating, right? Because there may well be a procession going through the Avenida de Liberdade today. And it'll be, I think, we're in the last few days, aren't we, of the Lisbon Book Fair as well. So Corpus Christi today, Catholic festival, national holiday here. And let's go straight into a deep thought. Another from Mel Robbins, who we've been enjoying this week. Facebook is nothing but heavily packaged Kodak moments that bear no relation to how people really live. Well, Mel Robbins, I beg to differ. I do get the point. But this was on Facebook the other day. And it is how one person lives sometimes in the afternoon. That's real life right there. It's not just Kodak moments, but wife embarrassing husband moments as he has a little snooze in the park, minding his own business, thinking that no one's ever going to find out about it. And that ended up on Facebook, framed as, does Portugal have a drunken homeless problem? I was just taking a little snooze under the trees. The atmosphere was so conducive to 40 winks there. So Mel Robbins, I do get your point about Kodak moments on Facebook. I think Instagram, you may have said that a little while ago, Mel Robbins. Insta would be the place where I would say that so many of the pictures there don't bear any relation to how people really live or what their faces really look like as well. Thank you very much, T-Duck. Thank you, Mel, who, of course, prior to joining CNN as a legal analyst, Mel Robbins worked as a criminal defense attorney. She might sue. Is it a he or a she? Oh, Melanie, rather than Mel Brooks, as in Mel. Melanie Robbins. I knew that. And hearing that you're a legal analyst and a criminal defense attorney, let me just make sure that you're clear that was a mistake when I called you a legal analyst rather than a legal analyst, which, of course, is what I meant to say. Sorry. Kane Sabia then. Modern marmalade is believed to have been invented in Portugal in the 16th century. What? This is the stuff of women's institutes back in the United Kingdom. I had no idea. Here's a picture of some marmalade, Portuguese style, made in a beautiful jelly mold. I've seen these made in aluminium in old houses here in Portugal. Sometimes they're in brass, aren't they, and hung up around the kitchen. I do like a jelly mold. Who doesn't like a wobbly jelly first thing in the morning? And those are some beautiful shapes right there. Cane Sabia modern marmalade is believed to have been invented in Portugal in the 16th century. Marmelada, a solid quince paste. Okay, quince marmalade then. Still made and sold in southern Europe. That's what the Portuguese are calling marmalade. Maybe they began the whole thing of marmalade and the Brits picked it up and ran with it because marmalade's certainly a big thing where I'm from. Its Portuguese origins are found in letters from William Grett to Lord Lisle. He sounds a Brit, doesn't he? In May 1534. I have sent your lordship a box of marmelado and another unto my good lady, your wife. That's beautiful, isn't it? Wonderful. Why don't we write... If you want to send me a WhatsApp today, could you please do it in that style? I have sent I have sent to your lordship a box of marmelado and another unto my good lady, your wife. Please talk to me like that on WhatsApp today on 913-590-303. According to José Pedro Machado, the oldest known document where the Portuguese word marmelada can be found. Is this a marmalade academic, José Pedro Machado, who found the earliest reference to marmelada in Gil Vicent's play Comédia de Rubena, written in 1521. Isn't it great that we have art and literature where we can reference such things? That's where we first heard about marmalade. Temos tanta marmelada is a Portuguese saying of the day now as well, isn't it? The Cane Sabia has morphed into temos tanta marmelada que a minha mãe vai me dar pouco. We have so much marmalade that my mother is going to give me a little. Well, that's how it should be when you make preserves, right? We have 6 dad jokes today because we didn't do them yesterday. I don't think it didn't seem right today after all that talk about citizenship and so on. So we'll have double dad jokes. I know Cátia Lima likes these, kind of. Who doesn't like to slap their forehead at the sound of a terrible dad joke? We do, and we'll have 6 of them today. We'll do them when the Portuguese joins as well. But I think Cátia will enjoy this today, talking about marmalade here in Portugal. Temos tanta marmelada que a minha mãe vai me dar pouco. Made so much marmalade that my mother is going to give me a little. That often heard Portuguese saying. Well, actually, it's a reference, isn't it, to marmalade in Gil Vicent's play Comédia de Rubena, written in 1521, would you believe? Nice one, T-Duck. And that's what we're all about, learning something new about Portugal every day here on the Good Morning Portugal show. We're going to learn loads today because we're going to talk to Cátia Lima in a few minutes about what makes someone Portuguese, which is aspirational work for many of us here, becoming more and more Portuguese each day. Bom dia, campers, from James. Feliz quinta a todos. Como tem passado? Muito bem, obrigado. James, hope you're doing well too. Of course, when we're in Torres Vedras, we're not far from you inland, aren't we? Go east from Ericeira and you end up in Torres Vedras pretty much. Morning all, managed 15,000 steps yesterday. Smug face, very good. Coach Turner, still humming Dire Straits today. This time, Brothers in Arms, a hauntingly beautiful song raised to another level by Knopfler. What a name! Mark Knopfler and his guitar there. Thank you very much, Coach T. Your God Squad tip of the day today. Then if you're managing 30 minutes of gentle walking each day, try adding a few faster steps, adding 4 to 5, a bit of fartlek. Adding 4 to 5 20-second bursts will raise your heart rate and completely confuse anybody who you're walking with and begin to change your metabolism. And as you speed off into the distance, you can shout out to the top of your voice, "Don't worry, I'm just changing my metabolism. Catch me up. See you at the coffee shop." Susie's in this morning. Nice one, Coach Turner. Good stuff there. Excellent, Coach Turner, and your God Squad tip of the day there. Bon dia from Varzé de Merige. Mariga, I think I'm going to go with there. Many options are available, and I do like to try most of them. Suze, good morning to you. Having a fine time in central Portugal. Bom dia then, alegria. Feliz Corpus Christi a todos. And let's play then. What is it to be Portuguese? Well, if you're in from Ponte Lima, it means pulling a bull around on a rope. If you don't like seeing bulls being taunted, look away for a couple of minutes. This is what has been happening in Ponte Lima in the last couple of days, and then we'll come straight to Cátia Lima thereafter. I find this very interesting. Now, you'll notice there aren't many women. What is it to be a Portuguese fella in Ponte Lima? You get involved, I think, in that. Women are so much more sensible, aren't they? That certainly shows us one thing. That's a fella's activity in Ponte Lima there. Certain individuals up drain pipes. The 2 most intelligent men I saw there were watching from a balcony, I think. But it wasn't like that the day I went to Ponte Lima. I did see the brass statue, which commemorates or suggests that this annual event takes place there. One more half a minute then with the hills in the distance, and then we'll come to Cátia Lima to talk to us more about what it is to be Portuguese. The sound of the crowd there is quite extraordinary, isn't it? The atmosphere in Ponte Lima there, the the corda, I think, the bull on a rope, I guess, literally translated their annual event happening in Ponte Lima. Quite extraordinary. Let's give her a great big round of applause. We're going to be talking now about what it is to be Portuguese. Hola, bom dia. Forgive me, first of all, if I may make a confession. Beyond Lisbon blogger Cátia Lima, I went to Lisbon yesterday. Can you forgive me?
Yeah, sure.
Normally I'm beyond Lisbon, but every now and then it is amazing to go to the capital. What an incredible city. I forget just how brilliant it is.
Lisbon did you go to?
I was in Chiado mainly, but I did
really?
I had quite the contrast. Now I'm gonna have to turn you up a little bit. I think we're not hearing you terribly well. However, I can do that from this end. I'm going to give you a boost of sound, which may become another problem when we have the Portuguese joining us, because he'll be booming, I expect, from his part of Portugal. Oh, I think I can hear you better now. Yeah, I was in. I dropped the family off at Colombo, which is the biggest shopping centre and most confusing shopping centre I think I've ever been to in my life, next door to the Benfica Stadium. There are a lot of people in there, aren't there? I mean, that's a place with its own hospital, its own chapel, its own airport. Well, there's a hospital next door, but I mean,
yes, next door.
But it is a village, isn't it? It's a small town. It's incredible. The amount of shops and concessions and cafes and points of interest in there is extraordinary. Then I pootled on myself to Chiado, and I was reminded this morning, Cátia, that I might get a fine because I was driving around in Chiado in my old car, which I'm not sure is allowed anymore. But it was worth it. There I was on the cobblestones, the tram tracks, in among the traders and the tourists. It was so wonderful. And I went to one of José Avilage's restaurants and had an incredible lunch with Chef, not with Chef Avilage, but at one of his creations, and tasted quite a few of his creations. Chiado, what is it to be Portuguese? You can't get more Portuguese than Chiado, can you?
Yeah, yes. Of course I can.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, if you go and say that to someone in Porto, for example, then tell me how that goes for you.
I'm not going to be doing that. You know I'm not going to be doing that. Cátia said it'll be your... Cátia suggested that I come here and tell you that Chiado is really Portuguese. I'll get a bit of swearing and a bit of tripe thrown at me, I think, in Porto. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I suppose the first trap I've fallen into there is how the picture postcard version of Portugal is very Chiado Tram 28 based, isn't it? And there's so much more to it than that, as we'll find out.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what a great idea. Even in Lisbon, absolutely. So what were you thinking on this matter of what makes somebody Portuguese?
Well, I thought it would be interesting to touch on this topic, since on the 10th, which will be Saturday, it's going to be Portugal Day. And so the Day of Portugal and the Portuguese communities. It's actually a longer title, but yeah. It's a fairly recent holiday in Portugal. And it got to be very much associated and adopted by Portuguese communities abroad. So besides all other celebrations they may have, like, for example, if you have a big community of people from the Azores, for example, like you do in the US, on the East Coast, they'll probably obviously also have some of the Azorian celebrations there. Like Corteus, for example, they also have in the Azores, they also do this Vaca de Cordas.
Okay.
But it was very much adopted by Portuguese communities abroad. And I wasn't very much aware of this whole thing of being Portuguese, what makes someone Portuguese.
Yeah.
Until a few years ago, when I got to talk with someone who is the middle child. There are three brothers. And the oldest one, I think he was still born in Portugal. He was born in Portugal before he immigrated with his parents, Portuguese people, to the US. And what happened was that I don't know about the others, but how he feels about Portugal, I don't know. But I know that the middle one told me he doesn't feel very much Portuguese because he got to be so he had so many friends from other cultures, etc., that he didn't feel particularly Portuguese or North American for that matter. It just felt like he grew up in a mix of cultures, and he was kind of not a byproduct, but a result of that. Uh, a result of that. But the youngest one, he really felt like he was Portuguese, although not living in Portugal, but he was very much Portuguese. He learned how to make lots of Portuguese dishes with his mother. And then as I got to know more people who were either the children of or grandchildren of Portuguese, and they were born in other countries, I became more aware of this. And someone also, because someone once told me as a reply to something on the blog, also someone told me once, there's nothing more Portuguese than a pastel de nata. And of course, for someone like me who battles this whole idea that Portugal is Lisbon. No, come on, no. Pastel de nata, yes, it's Portuguese, but it's an invention from Lisbon. And recently, it became spread out throughout the country. You can buy pastel de nata everywhere in the country today. But it's not like it's something originally from that you can find everywhere in the country.
Quite.
So I don't know. What do you think makes someone Portuguese?
That was a difficult day then, wasn't it? Nothing.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, and you do. I guess you do. People imagine, I suppose, that you're inviting this. Those sorts of responses, and I can imagine how awkward that is, because in a way it's like that person is celebrating
yes
Portugal, aren't they, and thinking they're doing a good thing by saying, "Yay, Portugal, pastel de natas." But from your point of view, I can see as well that yes, but
yeah, it's the same thing with fado, for example. It's sometimes people will assume, especially on Facebook and such, assume that I don't like fado. Yeah, I don't have anything against fado per se, but saying that fado is a national song, again, try going to Bragança, for example, or Alentejo and telling them that, and then let me know how it goes.
I understand. It's a bit like people imagining that British people wear bowler hats and have an umbrella and a briefcase. The stereotypes have their place, don't they? But they're kind of a cliche is a cliche for a reason. Partly because it's got a little bit of truth in it, but also because it's flipping annoying as well at other times, because it excludes other possibilities, which I suppose what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm sure the Portuguese will have something to say on this, because he's very interested in nationality, particularly from how he's trying to fit in as a British person. To answer your question, I was very complimented, very flattered by your suggestion when I was out cycling. Yes, I think I had this shirt on, or one like it. I was eating a pastel, a risol de camarão. Yeah, risol. I had the biggest shrimp I've ever had. It was like winning a lottery, Cátia. Sometimes it's like a puree of shrimp in there. This had a massive whole shrimp in it. And it was like, yay, I need to photograph this. It was a lucky day. So I have yes, it's probably not a good idea to turn an old shrimp into a memento. So just a photograph's enough. But there I was with my risol. And if you're a Portuguese dad, as you call me, I would be holding it with a serviette, wouldn't I? One of those grease-proof serviettes. And that's the reason why they're not absorbent, I think. They're mainly to stop fat and not water, aren't they? So that's why they're like tracing paper. And if you spill a drink, you use 300 of them to try and move the water around on a Portuguese cafe table, because they're not meant for that. They're meant to stop fat and grease on pastries, I think.
I
had my cafe, I had my pedras, I had my risol, I was cycling, I had a shirt on whilst cycling with a collar, with checkers. You say you look like a Portuguese dad. And that's the thing, isn't it? Culturally, that's what we're talking about, I think, here. We're not talking so much about the icons and the lots of, it's not almost not ideological things, but actually cultural things that are much more suggestive and influential rather than a thing in its own right. So I was very flattered by that. And I thought, yay, I've made some sort of impact and progress here doing that. And it is X factor, isn't it? So again, I'm moving away from the emblems and the icons, which of course you have to do if you're making key rings and t-shirts and mugs like that. But there's another one. So, oh no, not the cockerel again.
Well, if you were in Chiado yesterday, you must have seen stuff like that, by the hunters.
Exactly, and that's what it comes down to, isn't it? And I've got the Barcelos cockerel on my screen as we speak. It can't be helped, can it? That kind of shorthand, and it comes down to 6 icons or stereotypical images to sum up a whole culture. And in a way, I suppose what you're getting at is that's not fair in a way too, because it's such a rich and diverse culture, isn't it? So I would say it's all the other things we talk about, to answer your question in a really long-winded way. It is about how people are being, how people respond, what you experience in a cafe that you would never read about in a book or see on a YouTube video. Something that you experience for yourself intrinsically on a heart basis. That's what being Portuguese is about, I think, and probably other cultures as well. You can. That's what it is to really engage with the culture.
Mm-hmm. Also, the fact that. One thing is, and again, this applies to every country, I think. One thing is being used to only what people do in one city or one area, one region. But then as you get to travel across the country, you'll get to know that, you'll get to see that, there are changes. People aren't exactly all the same. And that's something I actually notice a lot from mostly expats, also tourists, is that people expect us to be all the same everywhere in the country because we're a small country. But no, even in terms of food, you see that we have a big diversity in terms of Portuguese culture. There are, of course, some common elements, but the north is not the same as the south, and there are differences. So yes, there are some common points, some common traits. But we're not all the same everywhere.
Yeah, and that's what I love about that. That in its own way is what it is to be Portuguese. And how I express this to people is it's a shared soul, but with different manifestations. So what I have experienced traveling around Portugal, which I've been lucky to do, is a sense of that same DNA. And the Portuguese soul expressing itself, but with little different manifestations and personality quirks around the country. So there is something, I think, definably Portuguese. And as you say, I mean, it's the best of both worlds, isn't it? Because yes, I get that and I like that and I experience it, whether I'm in, Lisbon, Porto, out in the sticks, maybe in the Azores and Madeira, and maybe in a Portuguese community in America, like you mentioned. And they are all, your New Jersey Portuguese people are a very particular kind of person with that same Portuguese soul who would be very different to a lettuce-eating Lisboeta.
Yes. For example, I think you also follow them, or at least know some of their videos, the Portuguese kids.
Yes, love them.
A lot of the references they have are from the Azores because they're descendant from people from the Azores, but there are also other traits there that are, common to every part of Portugal. And recently they posted one video. I felt like I felt so identified with that, which was there used to be 3 guys, now there are 2 guys and 1 woman, and she showed up with her hair up in a bun, and I think she had a piercing, a black T-shirt, and someone saying, "You don't look Portuguese." And I felt that because I don't look very stereotypically Portuguese. And sometimes people think I'm not Portuguese. And then she says, "Oh, wait, I'm just going to change." And then she goes into full Portuguese granny mode, with the glasses and the hair, the way she did her hair, and the shawl over her shoulders, and dancing like this, and drinking coffee, and sniffing cheese.
And the glasses, and a slightly hunched thing, and like, courage. I saw that one. They are well worth subscribing to, the Portuguese kids. And that's what's so great about them, right? They nail it, don't they? That thing. These X factor we're talking about. And there they are, American kids who've grown up in America, and they know it so well, don't they? They know mum, dad, avô, over there, and that's the, I guess, testament to the strength of the Portuguese culture, DNA and genes, is they permeate through the generations, so much so that they can make amusing videos about them. Superb. So what, I mean, from the point of view of us lot here, trying to become more Portuguese in the best possible way, rather than, appropriation, because that's another thing altogether, isn't it? What's your advice, or what else have you been thinking about this subject?
In terms of expats trying to be Portuguese?
Well, anything really, any angle on this, it's all help to us. I'm realizing that we're about, our 90 minutes on the show every day is in some way helping people learn more about Portugal. So this is really special and precious to us.
There are a couple of things here that I'd like to point out. One of them is, and I realize that it's going to be difficult for someone who doesn't speak Portuguese. Even for those who speak, it's not easy. There have been a few philosophers, writers in Portuguese history who have focused on this topic, and some of them I don't even think they have anything translated into English. Some will have, like Fernando Pessoa, for example. I think Agostinho da Silva, some if not of his works are translated into English. For those who feel brave to dive into that world, I would advise, it gives you a bit more of an academic perspective on things.
Oh, very good. Some will. Some people in this community will do that. Yeah, if we can have that.
I can write down a few names here.
Brilliant. All right, thank you for that. We are getting some love coming in from Raquel, who I think approves of what we're talking about today, and may well have a comment or two about it. Sci-fi, it's a Christian observance today. Of course, that's another thing about being Portuguese, isn't it? Is the holidays and how they permeate. Oh, maybe not. Not for you.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We'll come to that. Christian observance honors Holy Eucharist, also known as the Feast of the Most Holy Body of Christ today, as well as Day of the Wreaths. Thank you. Cátia is giving us a few leads for the more academically inclined folks who want to research those sorts of things. Matty, great. Thanks. Good to see you here this morning. A Nation's Heritage also says sci-fi and traditions are important to preserve because they help individuals to establish their identity. For children, this is very important to positive emotional development. And stereotyping, it's all about balance, isn't it? Is that the source of labeling? I don't think you can label a nation without using stereotypes, of course. And then when they become unuseful, you can let them go a bit, can't you? Come on,
simply evolving, yes.
Simply from Manuel Ferreira. It's all about voice on the 10th, isn't it?
Yeah. Although, Luís Camões, not so much an academic perspective, but yes. And I'd just like to say that one of these names here, Miguel Esteves Cardoso, again, not an academic perspective. He writes a lot for magazines and newspapers. And he talks about being Portuguese and about Portugal from a more, I think, approachable or easily approachable perspective. So if you're struggling with Portuguese, I would suggest starting with some of his writings on the topic before moving on to other things. Like Fernando Pessoa, for example, who talks about being Portuguese and about the whole notion of Portugalidade,
Portugality. Yeah. Oh, that's something for us today. Perfect. Portugalidade.
Yeah, I'm just going to write it down here.
And this is a modern writer talking about Portugalidade.
Who? Which one of them?
Which one of it was? I mean, are you saying that's a general term, or was it one of these writers who came up with that idea of Portugalidade?
I can't even remember honestly who came up with it.
Okay, all right.
Although maybe it's like this. For example, I can't remember exactly who it was. I'm just speaking from memory here, but I'm assuming it was not Fernando Pessoa, although he obviously touches on the subject a lot. Yes. That just doesn't touch on the subject. He actually revolves completely. This is from different perspectives. Some completely, very intellectual approaches. Others maybe not so much, but yeah. So these are just a few names, except from Camões.
Okay.
They're all people from the 20th century. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So there's some homework for people too. Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit of an input from Gary and Norman here. Is it Portuguese to eat snails, I wonder? It's a stereotype associated with the French more than the Portuguese. A smaller snack, as you can see on the plate there. You don't look like you're a fan, Katia, especially of the snail.
I think it's as much as a stereotype as eating sardines. I don't like neither snails nor sardines, and yet I'm Portuguese. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, he doesn't look happy about it either, does he? Really?
Yeah, no.
Norman,
Doesn't
you
look like he's enjoying
legend. Yeah, he's not. I mean, he later on there are pictures of him heartily enjoying, because once you get started with that bowl of snails and the seasoning, it's hard to
Some
stop. There are
people, yeah. Some people don't like the snails, but they like the sauce, and they like dipping the bread in the sauce.
that's what
So that's another
happens.
perspective.
Yes, and maybe that's you could tell a lot about somebody's personality. Are they do they like the snails? Do they just like the bread in the sauce? Again, interesting. You know, you're picking up on sardines there. You're Portuguese. You don't necessarily like these things because you are Portuguese, of course.
Yeah.
Right. And you winced when I said, "Oh, holidays, religious holidays. That's very Portuguese." Did you have something to say?
Yeah. I do. And then as I was looking at the video from Ponte Lima, earlier today I was commenting on a Facebook friend's post, which involved some of this. And she's Brazilian, but I think she lived in Portugal for a while. And what I feel like is that. And here I'm speaking from experience, okay? My own experience as someone who was born in 1980. So what I feel like is that, everyone, everywhere, we're constantly evolving and changing, right? And right now, I think that in Portugal, there's one big divide that's in terms of generation. And what I feel like is that she was talking about spirituality. And that was one of the things we were talking about. And I told her, in my experience, the older generations will be more religious, or tend to be more religious, but not necessarily more spiritual. I think the younger generations are very much trying to step aside an empty fulfilling of religious, traditions, and stepping into a more fulfilling spiritual life and view of things. And that paired with things like Corpus Christi today, and it applies to other religious festivities as well. There's this sense that somehow that's also connected. Things like this are also connected to deeply rooted traditions. And there's a lot of mixed feelings about this. There's, on the one hand, some people will feel shame about it, and others will feel like, okay, so it's not completely okay, but I'm not ready yet to just forget about this sort of tradition. So let's create something in between. That's my perspective of things. So when you talk about, and I think, like, for example, now we're in June, and this is a great time to say this. You have St. Anthony's in Lisbon and St. John's in Porto and in the north in general. There are other places celebrating St. John's as well. And they are a great mix of religious festival and quite non-religious celebrations. Like, for example, in St. Anthony's, you have on the 12th, you have the religious celebrations, but then you also have lots of partying going around with lots of alcohol, lots of dancing, loud music, people who couldn't care less about St. Anthony or the church, and all of that. And yet you will see, and yesterday you were in Lisbon, I bet you probably already saw lots of images of St. Anthony everywhere. Also, although you were in Chiado, maybe not so much, but... and in the same thing happens in other parts of the country. I think June is a great time to observe this kind of phenomena, this big mix of religious and non-religious, but you'll have this with other religious festivities as well throughout the year.
Well, you could say that in itself is very Portuguese, couldn't you? That there is on the same day of Sant Antonio, which is about to happen in San Martino here, we're celebrating 8 or 9 10 days of solid partying in honor of a saint. And some people will not be going to church during that 10 days. Others will. There are people in the town here, and that's what this is perhaps the Portuguese-ness of it, is how in some places around the world you would be looked down upon for not going to church during those 10 days. It doesn't seem to matter so much. I find Portuguese people very open-minded. So some people during this 10 days will be drunk every day. Some people will go to church every day, and they all get along just fine, don't they? And some people will have a little bit of both. Have a day on and a day off.
And you'll notice there are people who don't care. And you'll notice there are people who don't care about neither of those things. It's just in it for the churros and the bifanas and all of that. Yeah,
exactly. And yes, and there's something for everyone. And what I love about that is it's not any part of it is sort of being forced upon you. You kind of pick the bits you want to subscribe to. And I'm also thinking, if you do find yourself in a dark moment, you are reminded that spiritual support and the church community are there somewhere in the background of this culture. If you want it, if you need it, and also there's always someone to drink with as well if you need that. That to me is the Portuguese-ness of all of this. Is how that's all coexisting, isn't it? All together. There's no emphasis, no greater emphasis on any part of it. And the priest is coming through. He knows, doesn't he? He comes through at the front of the procession. The scouts, the cubs, the guides are there. The village dignitaries, the mayor, the president, and they come through, and the brass band, and they do their thing. And then, so that's their bit. And then there'll be a tour of the religious relics and so on. And then night falls, and it's party time. And everyone is getting on just fine, aren't they? It's just coexisting beautifully with all of that. And that to me is one of those X factor things. It's hard to describe, but that tolerance and all rocking along together from the different points of view of the community, I think is a Portuguese thing. I love that.
Also, you have to bear in mind that in some cases, like St. John's, for example, there is also a pre-Christian tradition associated with these dates.
Right. Yes. So the pagans rock out.
Yes, and somehow some of these things manage to, like you said, they just go like an arrow through the centuries until today.
Yeah, absolutely right, and upheld and honoured to this day by those who are happy to do so and are respected by their other counterparts in the community. There we go. That is a very Portuguese thing. Now, we've got also joining us on the line now, Cátia, our Norman. And this could become quite interesting. We've got somebody from Birmingham, somebody from Glasgow. So I will do my best to mediate here. Let's give him a nice big round of applause. Now, it is the man.
Hang on. There we go.
There we go. Let me just introduce you to the wonderful Cátia Lima at beyondlisbon.wordpress.com. And that's Norman, who we saw just now. There he is the other day. And then I was in Lisbon yesterday, Norman, and I met this guy, and I thought of you. These are the sort of nightmares and dreams you might be having subsequently. Thank you for joining us this morning. How is your tour? We can ask you, can't we, as somebody who's never been to Portugal before, what do you think of as what's your most obvious experience of Portuguese culture and how Portuguese people are?
Just laid back, mate.
Laid back.
Just laid back. Just nice slow pace. Just take everything, take your life at a nice slow pace and just no rush. Everybody's just going about their daily business at 2 miles an hour, and it's lovely. Nice weather, great red wine, lovely food.
Lovely food.
I love it. I love it, mate. The first time, and it won't be my last. It's a really nice country.
Excellent.
Should be proud of your country. Lovely.
There you go, Cátia. Thumbs up from Norman. What would you say when you go back and sort of tell people about the time you've had here? What would you describe as the most Portuguese thing as somebody who's just arrived and is enjoying it as you are?
That's a good question. Don't know, good question, that. What do you reckon, Nick? Most Portuguese thing?
Oh, Nikki's here as well. Fantastic.
Yeah, she's in the background. She's over there.
Right.
I don't know. What do you reckon, Nick? That's a good question. That.
Well, we've done the stereotype things. We've had the pastoral donata. We've done the French.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What else have we done? We had the javelin last night, which was
Javelin.
marvelous.
Oh yeah.
Javelin at Nasa do Sol. You can't get a more Portuguese restaurant than Nasa do Sol.
Yeah.
I would say. Cátia might disagree with me. But, Cátia, this is at Nasa do Sol. Is just outside San Martinho de Porto, and you have a huge canteen style where people turn up in buses. And you also have an area where the workmen come in and have lunch as well. I love that about Portugal. It's not like, there are people who've dressed up to go out for a special occasion at this restaurant. And there are guys who come in with their trucks and have some lunch at the counter as well. And the waiters, they need their own calendar. And I don't know if Nikki noticed this and Linda, but there are some buff waiters in Nasa do Sol as well with their tight white.
Huge one there.
There was a massive. He was like fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, wasn't it? That was about 10 feet wide.
That's your Glaswegian influence coming in right there. That's
yes, mate. Oh, you didn't notice? We noticed, didn't we, mate?
Yeah.
That big tall
that big shadow all over me.
Oh my lord.
The fellas, buff waiters there. Would you say that's a Portuguese thing, Cátia? The handsome waiters and there's definitely a waiter culture, isn't there? Of the tight black trousers, the white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. And,
rolled up, yeah.
Depends on where you are. Where you are. If you go to the cities, you'll see another sort of trend with the black apron, all black clothing. Yeah. So it depends a bit. Yeah. But we still have that very much that black trousers, white shirts kind of thing going.
And a pride in what they're doing. I absolutely love that. And you'd have got that at Nasa do Sol yesterday. And the other thing, when we had lunch there, as soon as service is over and most people have left, the waiting team and the kitchen team sit down and eat together as well. A beautiful sight. They like each other, it would appear. They're like a family.
Yeah,
really nice thing to see. Rather than just buggering off after the shift because they all hate each other, which is what you expect in some of these sort of fast food places. People just there to earn their bit of money and go. They love it, that reflection of. And that's another thing. We haven't talked so much about that this morning, Cátia. Portuguese are joining us in just a moment, but family culture. You've lived and grown up in that. That's an important part of, or is that another stereotype of Portuguese?
The Portuguese family. No. It's true. It's true. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think that's something we share with, apart from stereotypes and all that, but I think it's something we share with, other people's, other countries from Southern Europe, Mediterranean culture. We are very much more connected to and close to our family than probably in other parts of the world. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
It's not a question of dependency. Let me just say this. I feel like sometimes talking especially with people from Northern Europe, I feel like they get the idea that we're very much codependent, but that's not necessarily the case. Okay, we like our family, so we like being with our family and spending time with them, and traveling to be with our family in other parts of the country.
I have a question, Cátia. I have a question for you because Norman and Nikki's last 2 days will be in Porto. So great opportunity to ask you for 2 days in Porto, what should they see?
Yeah, what should they see?
Before you answer that, Cátia, can I just stop you there? Because we've got the Portugueeza, who I'm sure will add a rich layer to this conversation. Naughty, very, very naughty. He's the Portugueeza. Let's bring him onto the screen. Morning, Tony.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Very well, and all the better for seeing you and thinking that you'll have some wise insight into this conversation as well. Can we come back to you?
Well, I might have some insight, but
not wise necessarily.
No.
Okay, all right. Welcome. Great to see you. Are you well today?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. I'm fine.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I should have answered in Portuguese, right? But yeah.
You should have. Let's go up to Porto then. What should Norman and Nikki do on their 2 days in Porto?
I don't know. It depends on what your interests are. I mean, there are a few things that you have to do in Porto. Have to do again, right? Yes. So, like for example, instead of Porto, cross the bridge to Gaia, Vila Nova de Gaia, and go for port wine tasting, or 2, or more. I don't know if you like football, for example. I think you can visit the stadium there. I think if that's something you like to do. There are also, you have like cruises. I think it's probably it's going to be probably like too close to the date to set up something. But at least I think you can do like they have like little cruises just near the city. And that's like something that will give you an interesting perspective from the river. It depends a bit on what you like to do. And of course, in terms of food, you can either go for the super traditional approach and go for tripas, or you can go for more traditional, but more fairly recent one, and have a francesinha, which is kind of a mega sandwich with several layers of meat, and then it's topped off with cheese and sauce, and fries on the side, because that's clearly not enough. So yes.
They peaked early. I think Norman and Nikki had a francesinha the other day in central Portugal.
I had one. You didn't have one, did you?
You defeated him. You had to leave some.
It was too much. I just couldn't eat it all.
No.
Portugal national dish. That one.
No.
Tony, Portuguese? What have you got to say on this matter? You are thoughtful about this nationality, about what it is to be an expat here in Portugal. Nice patriotic mug, did I see there as well? Is that our king on your mug there?
Oh, this mug. Oh, that's just the first one I grabbed this morning. I didn't notice. Yeah, that's our king. Yeah,
our king. Right,
our king, Carl. Okay.
Yes. You look like you're really
and my king.
You're really enjoying your cup of tea this morning, aren't you? So, what's your view on this then? What is it to be Portuguese, such as you've experienced it so far, Tony?
I definitely agree with Cátia about the family aspect. It's something. Strangely enough, I noticed when I lived in Hong Kong as well. Very close families, and Sunday in particular is considered to be like family day. And but I think it used to be like that in England years ago. I think this is something that we've lost rather than something sort of new. I think it's something that we've lost. I mean, what do you think? When I was a kid, I remember living walking distance from my grandparents, for example. But I know that it's very unusual in England, and I think also I've lived in Australia. It's the same there. People get very become very separate. You can I think for I almost said Western people. I think it may be the sort of English speaking world, and I think Cátia said also Northern Europe, because it's similar again. I've also lived in Northern Europe. People can even live in different cities, even in different countries. Whereas definitely in Portugal, families seem a lot closer, and I think that's a great thing.
It is, and there's another sort of irony or contradiction, because also the Portuguese are great travelers, aren't they? And sometimes get away from their family and go traveling, but still you still have that bond and unit to come back to, don't you? Go on, Cátia. This thing about the travel.
Yeah, no, not just that. I was going to say that right now, with all the partying going on in the summer, and you'll have that throughout the country, it's fairly easy to see whole families going out together for the local festa. And I mean the grandparents, uncles, cousins, mom, dads, everyone together, like, few generations, 2 or 3 generations having a good time together. And what you said now about traveling and still keeping in touch with family is interesting, because, as you know, we are also a country of immigrants, right? And even before most people could afford to travel, to just buy a plane ticket and go to another part of the world, as we can do today, it was very, very common. It still is today, but not so much. As soon as August rolled around, you see the hordes of people coming from France, from Luxembourg, Belgium, Switzerland, to spend August in Portugal with their family, and then they would go back. Today it's a bit different, of course, because you can it's much probably cheaper in some cases, I would say, to just buy a plane ticket. And so, a lot of people get to visit also around Christmas, Easter, etc. They're not so confined to August. But my point is that even despite the difficulties, they would make a point of visiting the country and their family in August.
Yeah. Can I say another thing I've noticed is and I guess it's maybe people who have maybe smaller homes, or maybe the weather's good, they just want to get outside. But we see in just public spaces like parks and anywhere that there's some benches, we'll see what look like extended families gathering on Sundays and eating, just a massive variety of food, and they'll even be kind of what I consider to be dressed up. You know what I mean? All the men will be wearing shirts and trousers, and the women will be wearing dresses, and so it's a real occasion. And I think that also somehow on the psyche gives it some more importance. A little bit like maybe you dress up if you're going to church or something. You know what I mean? It gives it a bit more. A bit more meaning, yeah.
It's a bit of a special occasion, not special as in like a very formal event, but it's a special day. You get to be with the family, so you want to dress up a bit.
Yeah. Well, that's a cultural thing that I've really enjoyed, and our family do, and we maybe have made ourselves a little bit more Portuguese with that, because we bought a tablecloth to put over the picnic table.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's Portuguese. You know you're Portuguese when you brought a tablecloth to a picnic area.
I rebel against that, but my mother was adamant about having a tablecloth on the picnic table.
And like, other people come from the extended family, and there'll be beer, wine, liqueurs, hot food, cold food, dogs, kids, people from 4 generations. It's amazing that the Parc de Marendes experience on a Sunday is absolutely a beautiful thing to behold. Norman and Gary, what are you having your breakfast? This is a nice bit of multitasking.
Yeah, because we've got to get out of here soon, we're trying to get our tablets down our neck and a bit of toast and
Yeah, you're making sure you're taking your medication. Very good. Something has just occurred to me that both Norman and I could be in a Ken Livingstone lookalike competition as well.
Ken Livingstone.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
Both of us, though, I'm thinking, Norman.
I never saw that before. The neighbour said that. I can see it.
I only say it because I've been liking Ken Livingstone as well. I
mean, Les Dennis.
Sorry, Cátia. These are British cultural icons that we could be at. We could turn up at a Parc de Marendes in the UK and pretend to be Ken Livingstone or Les Dennis, or maybe one of each with us.
Livingston and Les. I like that.
Yeah, Livingston and Les opening a fake near you soon. Sorry, I interrupted. Random thought there. Cátia, what else?
Oh, sorry.
No, Tony, you did have something to say. No, I noticed.
Well, I was just going to say, I know we like to go forward, but just going back to yesterday, and it ties in a bit with the being Portuguese thing.
Yeah.
I started viewing, hoping to see something about the passport situation, and 45 minutes in, we still haven't got there. So I'm just wondering, did we get there in the end? And maybe it's something I can speak to you about later. Did we get a result on that? Yes. And then also you had an Australian on who claimed that all Australians only barbecue on gas barbecues.
Oh, were you offended?
I'm not offended. I just wanted to let all your listeners or viewers know that she's obviously a posh Australian. Because when I was in Australia, we would make a barbecue from a couple of bricks and a grill, and just some wood. So, and very normal for people to have brick barbecues and use wood and hot plates.
Well, it was Astrid. It was Astrid from Expats Portugal. I will mention it to her tonight. Yeah. You kind of somewhat resent that remark from yesterday.
We caught her out for being posh. That's what you can tell her.
Posh Aussie.
She's a posh Aussie. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And that brings us back, of course, beautifully, as though we planned this, to the great capability of the Portuguese alpha male and his barbecue. And I feel that little bit more Portuguese because I now can make a barbecue out of a couple of bricks and an old bit of ironwork that I found down by the bin and feed my family. Has that made me a bit more Portuguese as well, Cátia?
Yes, definitely. Although there are some Portuguese tricks that you need to know about barbecue. And when you use coal, for example, this is a very Portuguese thing. So don't come at me if in your country they do it differently. This is something Portuguese dads do. I learned this with my dad. You need to have potato peels if the fire is too strong. Yeah, so you don't throw water, just potato peels for the flames to die out a bit, but still be hot enough to cook your food.
Top tip. hot enough to burn the outside of the
Are we
food.
talking about this the kind of like the little barbecue that gets dragged out into the car park or something? Where I've seen that a few times.
Usually you find here a lot on supermarkets, for example. There are little black barbecues, so you can put them on top of something or on the floor, and and then you have the metal ones that look like that open. So you can put fish inside, sardines.
It's enough. It's enough. I'm really about this. I can't understand people who go out and spend thousands on these silly, American style. But no, there's no Americans here, are there?
No, you're okay. Carry on.
But these oversized monstrosities. You know what I mean? Just a little grill and a flame. It's
actually in some of those picnic areas, parque de merendas. You'll see areas like built with bricks that already are ready for barbecue. So you just have to bring your own coal.
Yeah, or people leave coal and you work with what's there, don't you, and leave your stuff there. That's another thing that might confuse people from other countries. Like, what? There are shared facilities that the public use and share with each other without destroying them or stealing them. Yes.
This is another for me, and again I might get into trouble, but it's just a fact. Is a stark difference between here and Spain. Is a public facility like that in Spain would have been scribbled all over long ago. And that's what I think sometimes about Spain. It looks like a big giant child was given a set of crayons and just scribbled all over the whole country. I don't know how else to say it, but in Portugal you just don't see that, Or if you do,
cities you do, If you go to Lisbon, you see a lot of that, yes.
I've got the Spanish ambassador just called in. Sorry, mate. We'll talk to you later about your.
Although in Portugal we have that they're called tagging. But we also have quite a few murals. We have the same guys making murals and being paid for by the local junta or the local camera. So it's a bit of a mix.
Exactly.
Well, it can look nice, I think, if it's done well. But if it's just people scribbling their names over each other, it looks like it's been. Sometimes it's hundreds of people have written over each other's name. I don't understand it. I'm getting old. I don't understand it.
I think probably Portuguese grandma would give the young tagger a clipped ear if they try and write on the barbecue in the Parque de Merenda. So that's part of the whole wonderful family vibe. Abel, of Portuguese origin, as you can see, Abel Pinheiro, but living up in the Scottish Highlands, I think, who can understand you perfectly, Norman, this morning. And Suze, is there a preferred wood for grilling to add specific flavour to specific meat? I don't think we're going for any of that pretension here in Portugal. It's all vegetable charcoal, isn't it?
Yeah. The only place that I know of where you'll find this kind of specific association with a type of meat and a type of wood is with smoking, chorizo and stuff like that. They prefer azinheiro. I don't know. I'd have to look up the name for that in English, but it's a type of oak.
Yes, okay. For the posh James thinks it is not a
not
national
so much
thing.
The barbecue.
Okay. No,
what I do is with my sorry to interrupt, Carl. If I have a charcoal barbecue, if you get a lovely big piece of bay, right, and throw that on there, obviously all that sort of smoke and the essences
and rosemary as well. Sometimes we do that as well.
Yeah,
with rosemary.
I mean, both the principal rambling with is huge.
Make sure you ask her first, though.
Dad joke. Very good.
That's all I've got.
I'm going to ask Tony something as well, because quite a few times driving around where I live, it's kind of very much like New South Wales, and like with all the eucalyptuses and stuff, you kind of have to. You expect a kangaroo to come bounding across the road in a minute. It's weird. It really is weird.
Which would be nice on the barbecue, of course, if that happens.
I drive a Vauxhall Vectra, which, as you know, is a Holden Vectra in Australia. And we'd been hiking once, and I came out of the trail and I was on a red gravel track. My Vectra parked there, steering wheel on the wrong side, eucalyptus trees. And I took a picture and I put it on Facebook and I said, guys, where am I? And quite a few people said, oh, you're back in Australia. I mean, it just looked exactly like Australia, with the, what I mean, with the red that kind of red gravel, the eucalypts, and of course a very familiar car. So yeah, I totally get that. You even get sometimes on the right when the temperature's right. You even get the the Blue Mountains. You get the mist. Yeah. You get the mist just like in the Blue Mountains. Yeah.
Very good.
No koalas. No koalas.
Well, it's only a matter of time, isn't it? Not to put on the barbecue, I hasten to add. The big American grills allow for a lower heat and slow cooking depending on your intent. And Manuel Ferreira, Suze, this is very Portuguese. I wonder which bit of what Suze is talking about there. But thank you for being here, Manuel Ferreira. Also, Eurico is here with us as well. And you may need to translate for us here. I think these are words of encouragement to us, right, Cátia?
That's a bit from a famous poem by Fernando. And it's actually on that book that you had some time ago on a shelf behind you, Mensagem.
Yes,
it's a series of poems, and this is a bit from one of the poems on that book, and it's a reference to the discoveries about. I'm not going to translate literally because translations are always horrible when it comes to poetry.
Yes,
but it's a reference to the discoveries and to the fact that on the second sentence there it says, to cross you, the sea or the ocean, how many mothers wept, how many children or many sons died, prayed in vain. And there's also another line that's not there. How many brides were left unmarried. So it's obviously a reference to life interrupted during that time.
Yes,
and obviously discoveries meant some horrible things, but also it took a lot of, I'm not going to say the word, but a lot of guts to do many of the things they did. And personally, I got to read several of the chronicles when I was, an undergraduate. And I think that for a lot of, especially the older generations, we had a very heroic, idealistic view of the people who were part of discoveries. And reading the chronicles, so firsthand, not reading what someone wrote about them, to me, it made them a lot more human, but not necessarily less heroic. Quite the contrary, because life was so hard for everyone.
Right.
It will reach. Okay, it would be a bit better in some aspects, but there still would be forced marriage, forced choice of profession, all of that. Going to war even if you didn't want to, because that was what was expected of you, etc., 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 etc. And the conditions on those ships.
Disgusting. Yes, absolutely.
Not just that. In most cases, especially the first wave of the discoveries, they had very little clue of where they were going and what they could find there. That's the fact. And just as an aside, this is something that surprised me. I didn't know about this. And one of the things I learned the most, and I learned and kept with me from that, especially in those first, that first wave of the discoveries, they would have, on the ships, they would have death convicts. And what happened was that, in most cases, they had been granted a kind of forgiving, from the king. Because they were like from lower nobility, so they were, special somehow. And for the mentality of the time, it was like the king was giving the king as divine
ruler.
Representatives, on earth. The king was giving them a second chance. So if they died, it was God's will. If they survived, it was God's will anyway. And what happened was that when they got somewhere new, and there were like a fruit, for example, or whatever, and you don't know if it's edible or not. So who's going to eat it? The death convict. Today it's just like
yes. Yeah, my God.
It's just a completely different new world. And I don't know why I dived into this topic, but
yes, how did we get there? Norman and Gary, was that reminding you of your time on the high seas there?
Normal day in Birmingham.
Normal day, yeah.
Normal
for you,
day in
innit?
Birmingham.
Normal day in the River Clyde for me.
Carl's normally the first one to try the new fruit anyway, so we've got nothing to worry about.
Normal day on the Clyde for me, mate.
Can I eat it now?
That's an Aussie joke, an Aussie dad joke there. I think. Very good. Thank you all so much for being here. We've got double dad jokes and a little factoid to finish with today, because the Portuguese are credited with giving tempura to the Japanese,
Yes,
of course.
yes.
So let's do that. Cátia, great subject. Norman and Gary, thank you for being here. Don't go just yet, because we can all have a good giggle together with these last few dad jokes. We won't keep you past 10 o'clock this morning. Have we deprived you, Tony, though, of some pithy insight on this? Because I know you're a very thoughtful man.
I was just going to mention that one of the things I've really enjoyed about coming to Portugal is my promotion to being a professor. So before I came to Portugal, I was a teacher, but now I'm a professor with no further study. Yeah. Do you know about this?
Senor Professor.
I am a professor. I don't know how that happened, but the best thing was
Have you used it when you go to the doctor or to get in the front of a queue or anything like that?
It doesn't impress anyone here. That's the problem.
Oh.
It just impresses me. It just impresses me. But I've had a further promotion this week. I had an email from my son's teacher, and normally she sends me those emails in Portuguese and I have to translate them. But this time she had to go writing it in English. Dear Your Excellency.
Oh, another promotion.
Dear Your Excellency. Okay. So from this day forth,
you have to use that as well now. Okay, all right. I didn't know. I'm sorry that I messed that up.
I'm sorry. What, Carl? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Your Excellency. Yes.
Thank you. That's better.
Professor, Your Excellency. Okay. I don't know if I could get used to that or not.
I could.
I know you could.
We've got another Lord Gilchrist here, haven't we?
Lord Gilchrist, what an amazing company we have. Wherever I am, I always try to behave like the local people, as I believe that respects them. Part of that is learning the language. It's also about not wanting to be perceived as an archetypal Brit. Yeah, a little bit of us kind of making up to do there as well, of course. Dougie says, morning, Doug, in Wales this morning. I don't think anything can make US expats Portuguese any more than we can try and make a Portuguese person British or American. I sometimes find that Portuguese expats, and then we lose him. But we go into the quesadilla from yesterday. Who knew tempura is a typical Japanese dish that was originally introduced to Japan by the Portuguese in Nagasaki through fritter cooking techniques during the 16th century. That's quite a good way of bonding with the locals, isn't it? Can I just show you my fritter cooking techniques? The word tempura may come from the word tempora, a Latin word meaning time period, used by both Spanish and Portuguese missionaries to refer to the Lenten period, or Ember Days. Ember Days, or Quattura Anni Tempora in Latin, refer to holy days when Catholics avoid red meat and eat. We're going to get to tempura eventually. Avoid red meat and eat fish or vegetables instead.
It's a bit like the Portuguese passport thing. This.
Well, 45 minutes later, we still haven't talked about tempura. So put it in the complaints book, Tony. The word tempura may also be derived from the Portuguese noun tempero, meaning a condiment or seasoning, or from the verb tempera, meaning to season. And finally, then, there is still today a dish in Portugal very similar to tempura called peixinhos de horta, garden fishes, which consist of green beans dipped in batter and fried. Who doesn't like to be dipped in batter and fried first thing in the morning? And I think we have a lovely... no, not that picture there. That's a different Portuguese dish. Or that one. What's he doing there? It's this dish.
Portuguese dish.
There we go. There's your peixinhos de horta, the garden fishes. T-Duck loves those. They're good, aren't they? It's a vegan tempura, should you need it as well.
Carl, I've just maybe made an association here. You know the fish and chip thing in Portugal?
Yes.
It's links, right?
I think so. The Portuguese do get credited with fish and chips as well as one of the early inventions that the Brits picked up.
Oh, yeah, Gary Lineker. God.
What?
It was Gary Lineker's thing, wasn't it?
Go on.
Yeah, you know Gary Lineker. He's spent the last few years slagging off everything British for some reason.
Yes,
that was
including fish and chips.
Including fish and chips. Yeah.
Disgusting. Okay. All right.
Fish supper, we call it in Scotland. Fish supper.
Fish supper on Friday.
Fish supper.
You don't say fish and chips up there. You just say a fish supper, no matter what time of day it is.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
You don't say,
And a can of
fish
iron
supper,
brew.
mate.
With iron brew or something a bit
Fish
stronger.
supper, iron brew. Deep fried Mars bar. Deep fried Snickers.
We had to go there eventually, didn't we? It took a
Bottle of
long time.
iron brew.
Yes. All right, dad jokes for everybody then this morning. Free dad jokes.
Material coming.
Use these later, guys, during the day here. Cold painters always put on a second coat.
Oh, cold painters always put on a second coat, mate. What?
No, that didn't go down well, did it? We really don't need gravity. It just weighs us down. Science. Tony's face. Tony, come on. Let's try this on you. Solar power is the future, but it won't happen overnight, Tony.
Better.
I've got some more here somewhere. The recycled ones from yesterday.
It's easy to make me laugh, Carl. It's easy.
Nicky's laughing in the background at that one.
Not this morning, no. My goodness. Okay, they're here somewhere. My recycled dad jokes. Would you believe? The ones I missed out on yesterday. Let's see what we can do if we can make Tony laugh this morning, which has become the challenge now. Okay. Oh no, that was the day before, but I could do those and no one would have known anyway. Oh no, the reason I can't do those is because my kid, my youngest, deleted WhatsApp off my phone to make room for some of his favorite apps, which was quite a spanner in the works. So it might be, unless you've got any material, guys. I mean, come on, we've got Glaswegian and Norman.
Carl, in your area, do you have those? It's not a joke, but in your area, do you have those kind of cleaning people that go around and clean the streets and that sort of thing? We've got a woman who does it in our village. Yeah, you know, she asked me the other day. I'm not, no joke. I was walking past her and I could smell weed. You know.
Yeah.
And I said to her, "What do you smoke?" She said, "Do you want some?" And I said, "No, thanks. I don't like high maintenance women."
Hey.
True story. Oh my goodness! All right, I found them now. Thank God. I have a dad joke.
No, they're all dirty, mate. Sorry.
Well, it's scraping the barrel, and probably Norman can't share the joke that he's thinking of. I have a dad joke about infinity, but I don't know how it ends. It's a tough crowd this morning, isn't it? Never discuss infinity with a mathematician. They'll go on about it forever. And final infinity. These infinity jokes could go on forever, but they're not going to this morning. To the person who invented infinity, thanks for everything. You can at least do a little giggle or some acknowledgement. Thank you, Cátia Lima.
Procrastination. Let's just think about that for a while.
Yes, Gary.
Yeah, there we go.
Very good. We're getting warmed up now. Thank you so much for being here. Unexpected.
Close to the bone for me, that one, though, to be fair.
All right. The drum's getting worn out here. We'll have to stop now. Norman, enjoy your last couple of days. Enjoy Porto. Love to Nikki. And thank you, Garvo. Hey, Nikki. Cheers, the Portugueeza. Your Excellency, Professor, the Portugueeza.
Thank you.
Thank you. There, drinking from his Our King cup this morning. And especially Our King. Yes, Australians, Canadians, and British people alike. Your King as well, Norman.
Including Scotland.
On that note,
right now, I'm glad that we're online and not in the same room.
Face to face. Cátia, great subject. Always fantastic to see you. Please buy Cátia a cup of coffee over at beyondlisbon.wordpress.com. Wonderful content over there. And continuing that wonderful work of challenging the stereotypes, as great as they are about Portugal, you know, the Barcelos cockerel, the pastel de nata, and the fado. There are other things beyond Lisbon and all over the country, around the world, in fact, that are wonderful Portuguese qualities. Take care, everybody. Bye for now, and have a great day. Ciao, ciao.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP Morning Show. Featuring mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day